Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm pleased to announce this is Defense Attorney Kirk Nurmi, and he is a cancer survivor, and he is going to be speaking on hardship and stress while you go through your treatment. And we're very lucky to have him, and I thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And thank you to Trish for the kind words, and thank you all for being here today. I know, apart from thanking you, I guess is what I'm saying, is I want to commend you for being here, because to come here today and talk about hardship isn't always the easiest thing to do. Hardship is a topic that we tend to want to ignore, right? Don't we like to think of hardship as something that is part of our past? We kind of like to live with the fiction that we've gone through a lot of things in the past, but hardship's not going to be a part of our future. And you should be commended for being here to give your time and attention to the subject of hardship. My hope today is that I'm going to kind of reward you by giving me your time and attention, by giving you a new way to think about hardship, a new perspective. And I want to be clear, though, the perspective I'm articulating here today isn't the perspective. It's not, I don't, unlike a lot of speakers, I don't take the approach that I'm all-knowing, that I know everything. I just offer my perspective in the hopes that maybe down the road, something I say when you face a hardship will help you deal with that hardship. And one of the experiences my life has taught me, not only as a cancer survivor, but other things that I've gone through in my life, is that hardships, if we make the right choices when they come into our lives, can pay dividends down the road. Now you may think, oh, Kirk, that can't be true. There's so much pain and suffering involved with a lot of hardships. And that's true. And I'm not here to discount that. What I'm here to say is when those painful suffering comes into your life, that if you make the right choices, down the road, those hardships can pay off benefits. Now, in saying this too, I understand that there are hardships that are so painful and that come with so much suffering that maybe no benefits can ever arise. I understand that. But what I'm talking about here today is the bulk of the hardships that we encounter in our lives. Now, one of the things that's inherent in my belief that hardships can pay benefits to us down the road is the idea that each and every one of us has a choice on how we react to the hardships that enter our lives. Let me say that again because it's important, and I don't think we often think about hardships in that way. Each and every one of us in this room has a choice on how we react to hardships that enter our lives. You may be thinking to yourself, Kirk, no, some hardships you just can't, you just have no choice, but you have to react a certain way. There may be a few that fit in that category. But my message to you today is that for the most part, you have a choice on how you react to any hardship that you have in your life. I think I can illustrate that to you this afternoon in looking at three different methods or choices we have when hardships come into our lives. It's not an extensive list, obviously, it's three. It doesn't cover every possible hardship. But I think it's a way of looking at hardship and the choices that we make as a way to kind of help you understand how we can get from a hardship that causes pain and suffering to a hardship that brings benefit to our lives. It's my belief that there are three main choices that most of us tend to make when a hardship enters our lives. We can choose to let that hardship destroy us. We can choose to let that hardship define us. Or we can choose to let that hardship direct us. And ultimately, as I keep repeating, the choice is yours. Is the hardship that you're confronting going to destroy you? Is it going to define you? Or is it going to direct you? Now, what do I mean by a hardship destroying you? Probably the best way to illustrate that is a hardship that most of us in this room have either encountered directly or indirectly. The hardship known as cancer. Trish said, I'm a cancer survivor. I first learned that I had cancer in late August or early September of 2015. It was during that time period that I learned that I had stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was also during that time period that I learned that modern medicine's response to my form of cancer was 6 rounds of chemotherapy. And given that we're in the modern age, Google and that sort of thing, I started to research chemotherapy. What are the side effects of chemotherapy? What are people's stories that have gone through chemotherapy? What effects does this treatment have on their lives long term? And I took a look at those things. And boy, those of you who know have gone through it or have taken a look at this kind of anecdotal research know that it's not pretty, right? And so I began to look, well, what alternatives are there? You know, there's always alternatives to mainstream medicine. And I looked at treatments from vitamins to meditation to herbs, all the way up to medical marijuana to THC. I took a look at it all. And on October 1st, 2015, I was at a center much like the one across the street here. I wasn't there to speak. October 1st, 2015 was the day that I received my first chemotherapy treatment. And why was I there? I was there because I made the choice to not let the hardship known as cancer destroy me. I made the choice after looking at all the research and thinking about it that I was going to choose the most logical and proven method of sending my cancer into remission. Now you could say, Kirk, you really didn't have a choice. If you didn't get treatment, you would have died. Cancer would have taken you. Well, yeah, that's true. But when I was diagnosed with cancer, I otherwise felt great. I was otherwise healthy. 49 years old. And I thought, look at all these evils and ills of chemotherapy. I could simply choose to live out the rest of my days, however many they might be, without going through chemotherapy, without submitting to any treatment at all. I could have made the choice for a less conventional method. But I made the choice to not let cancer destroy me. What do I mean now, moving on to the next area? What do I mean by when I say hardships defining us? Well, to describe that, I think I'm going to stick with the theme of cancer one more time. Because around the same time period, when I was dealing with this information, you know, that period of going from an otherwise healthy person to learning that you have a fatal disease, I began to think about something that might seem trivial, but maybe it's something that all of you have experienced. how was I going to share this information? Was I going to tell the world at large? Was I going to tell my friends, all my family? What was I going to do? I began to think about that. And of course, I was going to tell my wife and those very close to me. But I had serious doubts about whether I wanted to tell the world at large. Did I want to tell the fellow lawyers I worked with? Did I want them to know that I had cancer? I played tennis for a number of years with a similar group of guys. Did I want them to know that I was a cancer patient, that I was going through chemotherapy? And others, regardless of the social relationship, did I want the world to know? I made the choice that I didn't want the world to know. At that time, my thinking was that I didn't want those lawyers that I worked with to look at me any differently. You know, their pity and sympathy might have felt great, but I didn't want them to look at me differently. The same is true for the guys I played tennis with. You know, I didn't want them to look across the court and treat me any differently because I was going through chemotherapy. I still wanted to be Kirk, the guy they played tennis with. And the same was true for everyone, regardless of the relationship, social or professional. I didn't want to be looked at differently. And looking back and looking at how I view hardship now, I didn't realize it at the time, but I wasn't letting the hardship of cancer define me. I wasn't letting others put that label on me by viewing me through that prism. I didn't want to be seen like that. I didn't want to be defined by that. I wasn't going to accept that definition, regardless of how good the sympathy or pity might have felt. And looking back, I can see that that allowed me to kind of compartmentalize my hardship. My cancer was compartmentalized to those days I was sitting in the chair receiving chemotherapy. It was compartmentalized to those days that I was dealing with the after effects of chemotherapy and the medications. It was in this little kind of closet. And when those things weren't going on to the rest of the world, I could keep moving forward. I could keep writing. I could keep talking. I could keep lawyering. Whatever I was doing, I could keep doing it without that definition. Then as my treatment went on, about a little past the midway point, I had a test with great results that showed that my cancer, the treatments were working, in essence. That there were indications that I was going to survive cancer. And it was then and only then when I decided, okay, I can start letting the whole world know that I have cancer. And I didn't think about it this way at the time, but I was willing to let the whole world know then because the definition was different. The definition wasn't related to the hardship. The definition was related to hope. The definition was related to hope that I was going to be a cancer survivor. Future cancer survivor was a definition that I was willing to accept. Not cancer patient, not guy going through chemo. And I was willing to accept that definition, not only because it was one of hope for me and how people looked at me, but hopefully for others. For whatever tiny bit of a public figure I was, if that meant anything to anybody, I wanted to give them that hope. I wanted to give them that definition, that they were a future survivor as opposed to a cancer patient. And now, the final aspect of what I've laid out today is hardships directing us. And believe me when I say that, I don't say it to discount the hardships and the pain that come with any hardship, be it cancer or anything else that enters our life. I'm not discounting that. What I'm saying is a story of making, what I'm going to give you, I think, is a story of making choices to get past that hardship. And thankfully, I think since all of us in this room have, throughout the course of our lives, probably heard a lot more about cancer than we ever wanted to, I'm not going to relate this to cancer. I'm going to relate this to another story in my life. It goes way back. Most of you look like you're of age to remember the 1980s. Anybody remember? Maybe this. Not that one. Well, in the late 1980s, I was probably young like you. But I was actually probably a little older. I was in my late 20s. And I was having the sort of fun that a young man has in the late 1980s. But around the end of the 1980s, around 1989, for whatever reason, I guess, I got to a point where I said, you know, if you're ever going to fulfill your dream of being a lawyer, practicing law, you're going to have to get serious. You know, I had about a year and a half worth of schooling in, and you need 4 to get a bachelor's degree in order to even apply to law school. So something needed to change. I was working an overnight shift at a grocery store at the time. So I decided, well, I had a great job, paid well, and you know, nobody holds class between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. So I thought, well, this job would allow me to go to school and work. So I would put groceries on the shelves all night and go to school in the morning. Or I would go to school in the evening and put put groceries on the shelves in the evening after school. And I did that for about 2.5 years. And believe me, there wasn't much time for that fun that I was having before I went back to school, right? I was working. I was going to school full time, trying to get grades good enough to get me into law school. But I did it. I did everything I needed to do. I got my by the summer of 1992, I was in a position to get my bachelor's degree. I had taken the law school admission test. I'd applied to law schools. And on that day of my graduation, I still have the photo of myself and my grandparents. On an otherwise great day. But there was a hardship involved in that great day. See, even though I'd earned this bachelor's degree and this great accomplishment, on the day that the dean or whoever it was to hand me my diploma, I knew at that point in time that I wasn't going to get into law school. All the law schools that I had applied to had said no thank you. I was not going to be a law student in the fall of 1992, as was the plan for some 2.5 years. Now, certainly, that kind of hardship isn't as devastating as cancer or many other deadly diseases. But it was a big hardship. We work for goals. We want those goals. We did everything we can. And I'm sure all of us had that experience. And we just don't get there. And it was a devastating blow to me. And after I got that diploma, at the time it really didn't mean a lot to me because it wasn't going to change my life. It wasn't going to get me a better job. I needed to get into law school. So I made the decision. I started to think about what could I do? to still accomplish my goal? How could I overcome this? So I decided, well, things needed to change. And maybe one of the things I could do to make myself more attractive to law schools was to go get a master's degree, get a graduate degree, and prove that I could do it at a higher level, get good grades, quit my job, get good grades, and earn a master's degree. So that's what I decided to do. And to make a long story short, that course of action put me literally at a place and a point in time where I met my wife. And we've been married 23 years. And that is not a relationship I would trade for getting into law school a few years sooner. And what happened is the hardship of not getting into law school in the summer of 1992 directed me to a better place. To a place when I did earn that law degree, that I was happier, that I was more fulfilled, in a way that I never could have contemplated when that last law school on the list rejected me. But I want you to notice too, when I talk about this story of allowing hardship to direct me, what I didn't let hardship do. I didn't let hardship destroy me. Now, certainly not getting into law school isn't going to destroy a person in the way cancer or other fatal diseases can. But I didn't let the hardship of not getting into law school destroy my dream of becoming a lawyer. I could have said, gee whiz, I did all I could. I didn't make it. It's over. The dream could have died right there. But I made the choice to keep going. I also didn't choose to let the hardship define me. Right? I always pictured back then, some law school administrator, the dean or something, stamping reject on my application, right? I could have accepted that definition. I could have put it on my forehead, like a scarlet A. I could have put it on my heart. I could have put it in my soul, but I didn't. I didn't let that hardship of being rejected from law school define me. What I did was create a new definition. A definition that included hope, right? The definition that I was going to go to graduate school, and then I was going to go to law school. That was a definition that I was willing to accept. And I kept moving forward, and I didn't let the negative definition define me. So ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, that's my message for you here this afternoon. Whatever hardships come into your life, don't let them destroy you in any fashion. Don't let them destroy your life. Don't let them destroy your dreams. Keep going. Don't accept a definition that a hardship wants to put on you. Instead, accept a definition of hope. Of the hope that comes from moving past whatever hardship. Don't let that hardship define you, no matter how good it might feel if you get sympathy from others. Because that's only temporary, because you're left there. You're left in that state. When that sympathy goes away, you're still there where you don't want to be, living with that definition. Resist that temptation to have that definition and accept one of hope. Because I think if you do that, ladies and gentlemen, that ultimately the hardship that you encounter will direct you to a better place, whatever that means for you. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Kirk?
All right, don't be bashful. All right, well, easy enough. Thank you. Thank you all then.